Not really digging it. I mean, it's all right. Don't really hear anything like new, anything revolutionary. Not like the Mick Mars record. I'm not trying to like make this a Motley versus Mick Mars thing. I want to try to keep it classy, but I just don't see anything. I don't hear anything innovative. How's it going, everyone? You're watching Sight Sounds Flavors on YouTube, sightsoundsflavors.com. If at any point in time you like this video, smash that like button. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, and leave a comment down below. I don't really hear anything that gets me excited. And I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of wanted to hear something to get excited over because I've been so hard on the crew, on Vince and Nikki and Tommy. I wasn't hard on John 5. He's just a fill-in guitar player. You know what I mean? He didn't pay his dues on the Sunset Strip, living in some cramped apartment. You know, he wasn't with the crew through grunge, through a replacement singer, through a reunion. He just joined. You know, they stole him from Rob Zombie for a lot of money, and he joined. I mean, pretty much it. But you look at what Mick Mars was able to accomplish, both on the charts, putting together these bands, because it wasn't just one band that did it all. It was Mick with a variety of players and singers. I don't know. I'm not trying to hate on Motley. I'm not. Dogs of War, to me, is like Saints of Los Angeles. It's like Generation Swine. It's like, it's just experimental hocus pocus at this point. You know, might as well just call it 6 a.m. or something. You know what I mean? Could be DJ Ashba, John 5, you know, Chris Vrenna, you know, Robin Fink, whoever. I mean, it's just not Motley. It's just not. And I mean, you know, Vince's vocals sound really good, but is that even really Vince? I mean, you know, everybody sounds great in the studio, you know, but I mean, seeing Vince up there huffing and puffing, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't think that was Vince's voice. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was some like AI stuff going on. Who knows if Nikki was playing the bass, you know? It's just, and I know they didn't fire Mick. I know Mick couldn't continue touring, so he retired from touring. But, you know, I mean, for them to say that Mick was forgetting his parts and was making all sorts of mistakes, and he puts out the record that he put out, and then these guys supposedly on their game with this like magical new guitar player or whatever, it's like this ingredient that's going to just, you know, bring Motley back to true form, doesn't really sound like anything. I'm curious what, if anything, Dogs of War did on the charts. I'll be curious to see what, you know, the critics write. Not that Motley ever, you know, made music for the critics, but I think every band to a certain extent does, because they want the validation. I mean, you're not going to sit here and tell me that Motley wasn't stoked to be number 2 for Girls, 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 which really they were number 1, but Whitney Houston ruined that. You know, or when they actually got number 1 for Dr. Feelgood. You're not going to tell me that they didn't care about that, because that's horse pucky, you know. I'm not going to do any tomfoolery here. I'm going to tell you how it is. Even the Sex Pistols, even, you know, the Clash, you know, Iggy Pop. I mean, you know, G.G. Allen, if he ever would have charted, not that he ever did, but of course they care about the charts, because every band, even your punk rockers that arguably don't care about that sort of thing, they care about that sort of thing. You know, and I think that it probably is burning a hole in Nikki Sixx's britches that Mick Mars upstaged the whole band. I mean, he upstaged them. I mean, you could argue that Vince Neil with Exposed upstaged them, but it wasn't really an upstaging because he came out first. And then you could maybe argue that the Motley record came out, you know, a year later, or even 9 or 10 months later, but it came out on a different calendar year. And anything later in the 90s was closer to grunge. You know, 93, you could still put out records like Exposed or like Warrant with Dog Eat Dog, or whatever. And then 94 was like 1 year deeper into grunge, but that's not why the self-titled sold gold and Exposed went platinum. It's because Exposed was a better record. I love the self-titled, don't get me wrong. I think that's the best Motley Crue record there is. I love John Corabi. And every song on that record is amazing, but it's not Motley Crue. It was something else, but it wasn't Motley Crue. Vince Neil was better at sounding like a Motley Crue record than Motley Crue was. And that's why Exposed sold double than what Motley sold in 94. But I think that what Mick Mars did trumps even that. I think Mick's record is so much better. Now, granted, Mick put out several singles. Motley's only put out this one single. But for what it's worth, if the rest of the Motley Crue record's going to be like Dogs of War, then I would say Mick Mars probably got the upper hand here. Because Dogs of War doesn't sound like anything I've never heard before. It doesn't sound like anything novel. It's Vince's same vocal range. You know, Nicky and Tommy's same rhythm section. I was really hoping to hear like a fiery, blow my mind, drop my jaw guitar solo from John 5. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. I mean, I don't hear it. The production value is spot on, of course. You know, it's Motley Crue. So they probably had, you know, the best like Pro Tools and probably like 24 track recording and stuff. And, you know, I don't know who mastered it, but it sounds like a, you know, a big leagues kind of record. But again, the actual stuff, like removing all the technology, removing all the people that probably worked on it behind the glass and at the mastering process, it doesn't do it for me. It really, I would, if I was to throw it in with, you know, if the Motley records, I've only heard Dogs of War, but if Dogs of War is what that whole record is going to sound like, I would throw it in with like New Tattoo or something like that. Great record, but nothing new. You know, I wouldn't even put this in like the Generation Swine category because it's not, I wouldn't, you know, initially maybe in the video I did throw it in there, but only because it doesn't sound like Motley Crue did I throw it in there. But it's not that it doesn't sound like Motley Crue because it's experimental like Generation Swine was. It just doesn't sound like Motley Crue because Mick Mars isn't there. And, you know, I know that a lot of people say, well, you really can't tell when the bass player isn't there. Like, for example, Perry Richardson. A lot of people, I can tell, but a lot of people couldn't tell that Perry Richardson wasn't in Firehouse anymore. A lot of people can't tell Tim Gaines isn't in Stryper. I can tell because I play bass. But unless you play bass, you probably couldn't tell, right? And maybe you could make a similar argument for drums. Maybe. Because drums really aren't a musical instrument. It's percussion. I know people will argue with me about that, but you know, very few songs can you tell what the song is just by hearing the drum track. It's not an instrument like that. You know what I mean? It's not a musical instrument. It's percussion. And vocals, 100%, you can tell the difference. But I think that with guitar, you also can. If you would have removed Eddie Van Halen from Van Halen and kept Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and either Sammy or Roth, I don't think that would have sounded like Van Halen. You could have had a dead ringer for Eddie Van Halen. You could have put Dave Navarro in there maybe, or I don't know, maybe even Slash. It would not have sounded like Van Halen. I think that the guitar is instrumental, pun intended, in making a band sound the way that it should. I think the guitarist and the vocalist can do that. I don't know about the bass player necessarily or the drummer. I would say the bass more so than the drums because drums are not an instrument like that. Bass is. It's got notes, you know, it's got chords. You know, you hear a bass line, you know what song it is, okay? You have an aggressive bass player like a Duff McKagan, you know, or a Sid Vicious who only had one record, but you could hear him, you know what I mean? I was gonna say, or a Geddy Lee, or a who's the guy from Mr. Big? Billy Sheehan. You can tell those bass players. I mean, that's like, you know, you can tell. You take Billy Sheehan out of Mr. Big, you know, that's not Mr. Big anymore, you know. But I don't think Nicky's got that signature. And even still, though, I mean, even if he did it, who cares? The point is Mick Mars isn't there. It does not sound like Motley Crue, but it also doesn't sound experimental like Generation. So it just doesn't sound. It's okay. I mean, if I was to give it like 1 to 10, I'd give it a 6, maybe a 7. That's not bad. That's not bad. That's the kind of thing you. I mean, now I got Spotify Premium, so I could hear it not for free because I'm paying $12 a month, but within that $12, whatever I listen to is included, so I don't have to go and buy it. But like, if let's say back in the day I was going to download Dogs of War on iTunes and pay $1 for it, I wouldn't be upset about it. I wouldn't feel gypped. I wouldn't feel like I got ripped off. But I'm also not going to say, wow, this is like Primal Scream. I'm not going to say, wow, Jesus Christ, this sounds really good. Is this Livewire? I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say, like, maybe it's going to be like, what's the song off New Tattoo that I like? White Punks on Dope. Something like that. You know what I mean? Or maybe, I don't know, like, I don't know. It's not a bad song. It's just not to the level of what Mick Mars put out. And that's got to make those guys feel some kind of way because, first of all, Mick wasn't even supposed to make music because if you listen to the Motley camp, he couldn't even play his guitar well. And then they were saying, well, he'll never come out with it. He's been talking about that forever. Comes out with a record. It goes nuts on the charts. The critics love it. The fans love it. Motley takes forever and a day to come out with something to match that, and this is what that was. Not impressed. Not impressed. Sorry. 1 out of 10, I give it a 7. Maybe. 6.5, 7. Mick was doing 9 work. Mick was doing 9 work.